What happened to George Floyd was an absolute disgrace. It was hard for me to watch the videos of the police officers brutalizing him up until the time of his death. I don't see how anyone could watch that video and not be outraged. What's particularly egregious is that these were police officers, the people who we trust to protect us. They executed this guy in broad daylight with multiple witnesses present. Now, I know that it's come to light that Floyd had a criminal past and that there was drugs in his system at the time of his arrest and murder. However, it doesn't in any way excuse or justify what the police did, and we shouldn't allow that to overshadow the fact that this was an untimely death and a tragedy. Now, I also understand the outrage behind the deaths of Tatiana Jefferson, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery. No excuse for any of these deaths. I understand the anger behind some of the protests. People have a right to be outraged, and they have a right to protest. They have a right to exercise their First Amendment rights to peacefully protest. Now, finally, it goes without saying that Black Lives Matter. Of course they matter. African Americans are created in the image and likeness of God, just like anyone else. Their souls hold the same intrinsic value as any other souls. And so I do not agree with this parodying the phrase all lives matter. Everyone knows all lives matter, including the protesters, including everyone in the African community. So saying something like that right now isn't helpful. It only serves to provoke the ire of a community that's already in a lot of pain. Nevertheless, this is where my agreement with the popular opinion ends. For what we are witnessing right now, the only appropriate word I can think to describe it is satanic, with an uppercase S. What we are witnessing right now is a flashpoint in the eternal war between good and evil that started when Satan and his one-third of the angels were kicked out of heaven, when Satan, in his hubris, tried to exalt himself above the throne of God because he thought he could do a better job than God, and he thought he deserved to be worshipped as opposed to God. So right now, Satan and his willing accomplices in this world are working overtime to set the stage for the Antichrist to take power. So there are 4 truths that you have to accept in order to understand what is going on in this world right now. One is that there is a God, the God of the Bible, the Father of Jesus Christ. Number 2, God works through people to bring about his will and the kingdom of heaven on this earth. Number 3, there is a devil. His name is Lucifer, or Satan. Number 4, the devil works through people to bring about his agenda and the kingdom of darkness on this earth. Now, I love the book of Ephesians. There's so much good stuff in this book about spiritual warfare and how we can overcome the evil plots of Satan. So, relevant verse here is Ephesians 6:12. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. Now, what does this mean? So, a Bible verse quoted above deals with the hierarchy of the kingdom of darkness, evil, and all lies, Satan's demonic hierarchy. An evil kingdom is a perversion of God's hierarchy and kingdom of light and righteousness. So, it's important to note here that God has delegated authority to his angelic hierarchy to carry out his divine will. Satan has created a counterfeit hierarchy, a demonic evil order in furtherance of his nefarious plans. Now, what are principalities? Principalities are ruling spirits who have been assigned to nations and cities falling within certain geographic regions and influence people who rule over these places, whether they be kings, emperors, dictators, parliamentarians, presidents, congressmen, senators, mayors, governors, whatever. Their intentions are to fully control the politics of these nations and cities by using the people in power as their vessels. So the principalities can be thought of as puppet masters, and all of the people in power can be thought of as puppets on a string. These people, they rule not in favor of the people who are their constituents. They only act in furtherance of their own power and the satanic agenda. Satan and his principalities wish to inflict as much pain, suffering, misery, sorrow, death, and destruction as possible to as many people as possible. They've worked through many people in history to bring this to fruition. Some examples I can cite for you are Hugo Chavez, Adolf Hitler, Mao, Pol Pot, Stalin, Lenin, and Castro. They are still working through people, and they are still succeeding to this day. The 3 great collectivist movements of the 20th century were progressivism, communism, and fascism. All three of these ideologies are on the same side of the aisle, the left. Adolf Hitler in a 1927 speech said, "We are socialists. We are enemies of today's capitalist system of exploitation, and we are determined to destroy the system under all conditions." Hitler actually changed the name of the German Workers' Party to the National Socialist German Workers' Party. He wanted to emphasize that the Nazis were socialists and that Nazi economic policy involved complete state control of the private sector. Actually, the name Nazi is a compression of the two terms national and socialist. Nazism, fascism, communism, socialism, progressivism, whatever you want to call it, they're all leftist ideologies with the same results. They bring about tyranny, oppression, mass murder, and suffering on a mass scale. Every time that socialism has been tried, it's failed. It's been tried in 25 countries. It has failed every single time. That is why Satan and his principalities are working overtime to bring socialism to as many jurisdictions as possible, including the United States of America. Because remember what Satan's objective is. It's to destroy God and his creation. So let's talk about Karl Marx now. Karl Marx considered himself to be a prophet, not an instigator of the advent of socialism. What he tried to do was he tried to exploit the grievances of the working class, also known as the proletariat, so that they would overthrow the bourgeoisie. Bourgeoisie was the factory owners, those who were rich, who controlled the means of production. But he didn't believe in creating the circumstances that caused the socialist rebellion. He just believed it would happen naturally. And so he thought it was just best to just plan for the revolution when it did happen. This never happened in the world. Workers were just too content with their labor, with their jobs and their labor unions. And so they never rebelled. Now, this takes us to Lenin. Lenin was aware of this problem, and that's why he instituted Leninism. He knew that the working class wouldn't revolt, so it had to be done for them. And so then what Lenin did was he assembled this revolutionary vanguard of activists and fighters to overthrow the Tsar and introduce Bolshevik socialism to Russia. Now, meanwhile, it's important that we also talk about the Italian communist Antonio Gramsci. He introduced the important concept of hegemony, which is basically the culture. He basically argued that the ruling class, they didn't rule because of economics. They ruled because bourgeoisie values were internalized in the culture. They permeated the cultural, academic, and psychological realm. And he knew it would be impossible to launch a socialist revolution as long as the workers internalized these bourgeoisie values. The workers didn't want to overthrow their employers. They wanted to become like them. They strived to become like their employers. So Gramsci knew he had to break this hegemony and create a new one. His plan involved his socialist activists infiltrating the institutions, the universities, the art world, and culture in general. This way he would be able to take out bourgeoisie values from within. And if that seems kind of familiar to what's happening right now, that's because it is. So let's fast forward now to the 1960s. Herbert Marcuse, he was the forerunner of socialism in America. And just like Marx, he knew that class division wasn't going to work to bring about the socialist revolution. He believed that he had to manipulate the circumstances in order to do this. So he envisioned a new proletariat that would constitute a new political majority. His proletariat consisted of the Vietnam draft dodgers, the Black Power movement, and the feminist movement. So now let's fast forward to now. The new proletariat is this disparate coalition of aggrieved minority groups that have been assembled by the Democrat Party. They consist of the climate change fanatics, the feminists, the LGBT, illegal immigrants, and African Americans. Now, the new bourgeoisie, or the oppressors, are white heterosexual males, even worse if they're Christian. The new left suggests that these oppressors are responsible for all the ills and evil in the United States, and they're the ones responsible for the oppression of all those aggrieved minority groups that I've just mentioned. The Democrats claim that everything about this country is unjust because it has oppressed these minority groups. And so they claim that the U.S. must be undone and rebuilt. It's just past the point of redemption. Everything just needs to be done away with. For example, we need to get rid of the Constitution. We need to get rid of capitalism. We need to create a new Bill of Rights and implement socialism. So what the left has essentially done is they have combined socialism with identity politics. Dinesh D'Souza actually coined the term identity socialism to describe this phenomenon. And on top of that, we have these, on top of that, the leftist, socialist, globalists, they utilize these paramilitary groups such as Antifa to enact their agenda. And that's pretty common. Communists have always used paramilitary groups to achieve political objectives that they would not be able to achieve on their own through standard means. So, if socialism is a theory, Antifa actually puts it into practice. One of the ways that socialists undermine the current government is to cause people to lose faith in their institutions, such as the police, for example, and thus they'll be more open to a new form of government, such as socialism. The left declares that the U.S. is an inherently racist and oppressive country, and that is a lie. You know why it's a lie? It's because so many people from around the world, minorities included, people of all colors, do everything to come to America, including risking their lives and sacrificing everything. Why? Because they know that this is a land of opportunity. It's a land of opportunity for all, that as long as you work hard and persevere, you will be successful. It doesn't matter what the color of your skin is. Now, these lies that this country is racist have proliferated massively because the left has almost exclusive control of the three major megaphones of society: Hollywood, the media, and academia. Schools across the country are indoctrinating kids with this nonsense that this country is racist. It begins in grade school all the way up through middle school, high school, and college. Right now they're teaching the 1619 Project in schools, and that project is a complete farce. A lot of this stuff in there has been completely debunked. It's been shown to be lies. And the woman who actually has overseen that project is a complete lunatic. She was the one saying that property damage doesn't count as violence because they can be replaced. This whole Black Lives Matter movement, this social justice movement, it's become a cult. And you need not look further than social media. I mean, right now you see people demonizing their family members or calling out other people to demonize their family members or ostracize them if they don't get on board with this social justice agenda. Nothing but total conformity and compliance will be tolerated. I've seen a lot of intolerance on social media for opposing the beliefs of the religion of social justice. You can't just agree with some of what the protesters believe in. You have to agree with all of it. And, if you don't agree with all of it, then they're not your friends anymore. And to me, that just sounds totally unreasonable. And you have to understand the reason that people are saying things like this is because the social justice agenda, part of progressivism as a whole, it's a religion. This isn't a civil rights movement, it's a cult. And what we've seen on college campuses in the past few years, all the unhinged radicalism and ideas, like people walking up to white people and telling them to check their privilege. Now we're seeing that same radicalism in the real world, and that's because of this agenda to fool people into believing all these lies. For example, that this country is just inherently racist. I, for one, am not going to believe the lies, no matter how many friends I lose. Many people don't want to lose their friends, so they kowtow to this movement, and I understand that. But I'm not going to accept that because there's just so many lies here. These are the stats of police officers killing African Americans versus other races for the past few years. This is taken from a piece written by Heather McDonald in the Wall Street Journal. In 2019, the police officers fatally shot 1,004 people. Most of them were armed or posed a threat. Out of that 1,004, 235 African Americans were shot. That alone right there shows that the police are not committing genocide against African American people. Washington Post has maintained a database of all police killings. In 2019, the 802 police shootings in which the race of the suspect and officer were noted, 371 were white, 236 were black. The vast majority of people were armed, not unarmed, and black suspects were significantly more likely to have a weapon than white suspects. Yet, more white suspects were killed. Only 19 of these were unarmed whites, down from 38 in 2015, so it's going lower. And only 9 of these were unarmed African Americans, down from 32 in 2015, again going lower. If anything, police shootings of unarmed people, especially black people, are decreasing, not increasing. Last year was the safest year for unarmed suspects, both white and black. As for these unarmed black men who were killed, half of them were far from innocent. In the 5 unarmed deaths, an officer was attacked just before the shooting occurred. 1 was allegedly an accident, and there were only 4 deaths where the officer shot an unarmed black person, and in 2 of those instances, 2 of the officers were charged. And the other 2, they were not charged. So this is a very small number. It's not even close to the genocide that people are declaring that this is. Meanwhile, it's been dangerous to be a cop. 48 cops were murdered in 2019. That's more than the number of unarmed suspects killed of all races. A police officer is 18.5 times more likely to be killed by a black male than an unarmed black male is to be killed by a police officer. In 2018, 7,407 African Americans were murdered in the U.S. So compare that to the numbers of African Americans killed by the cops in 2019. Assume that 7,407 number remained about the same in 2019. Those 9 unarmed black victims killed by police represent just 0.1% of all African Americans killed. Not 1%, 0.1%. This was taken from the article The Myth of Systemic Police Racism in the Wall Street Journal. While I agree with the sentiment that Black Lives Matter, I have never supported the group Black Lives Matter. Not in 2015, not in 2017. After all these high-profile incidents occurred, I always told people that there's a radical agenda here, and that's why I don't support Black Lives Matter. So, who is Black Lives Matter? They are a dangerous, radical leftist Marxist group. They're no different than the Weather Underground, Antifa, the Occupy movement. Look into it. I encourage you to please look into it. Do your research. Do not listen to mainstream media or people on social media. Look into it yourself. Look into what the founders, look into the background of the founders and what they believe. Look at the website. Just do some research on what people have to say about it. So what does BLM want? They want to disrupt the Western nuclear family. And this is actually listed on their website. Now, we all know that African Americans do better when they come out of a nuclear family. If anything, a lot of the problems have been caused in the communities because of the absence of fathers in the household. So if they're trying to disrupt the nuclear family, it makes me think, how does Black Lives Matter care about Black Lives? Black Lives Matter is not a legitimate organization dedicated to saving black lives and helping African Americans realize their potential. If it was, it would be taking a stand against all the inner city violence, all the African Americans killed by other African Americans every day in the major cities. They would take a stand against the staggering number of black babies who are aborted every year. Now, if you want to talk about genocide, look into those numbers, and you'll really see that that number dwarfs the amount of African Americans killed by police. Benjamin Watson, the football player, is pretty vocal about this, and he talks about this a lot. How genocide against African American communities occurring through abortion. Black Lives Matter has taken a number of radical anti-police, anti-law and order positions over the years. The thing you need to understand is they're not against bad cops. They're against all cops and any semblance of law and order. They are a pro-anarchy organization funded by George Soros. And actually, more evidence of this is what happened in Atlanta the other day, where someone was fighting with the cops, and he actually pulled the cop's taser out and shot the taser at the cop, or at least aimed it at him, and the police shot him. But they don't care about that. They think it's an unjust murder. So that right there kind of just shows you how this is an illegitimate movement. Now, Black Lives Matter circulated a petition to defund the police. Now, if we cared about black lives, we would continue to fund the police, or if anything, increase the funds. Because we saw what happened after the Ferguson effect. The police backed off from proactive policing after the Michael Brown incident, and all those consent decrees went into effect around the country. And the crime rate, notably the homicide rate, spiked in cities around the country. African Americans bear the brunt of this. So again, I'll ask you, do Black Lives really matter to the group BLM? People are hashtagging and seriously suggesting defunding the police. And yeah, I know, it doesn't actually mean abolish in a lot of cases. It can just mean to take funds from the police department and put it into other areas of the community. However, I don't even like that idea either, and here's why. The first things to go are going to be training and equipment. I believe that the police need the equipment that they have, even the riot gear, to respond to civil disturbances. It protects them from things like flying bottles and bricks so that they're not getting hit in the head with this kind of stuff. They need the riot shields to protect their bodies. With regard to training, it's going to be the first thing to go. That's what I'm hearing a lot of ranking law enforcement say, that training will be the first thing to go. And first of all, cops love to train. They like to be better at their job. They like knowing all the most advanced and recent police techniques, and they do it so they can better serve their community. And the community, on the other hand, should want their police to be better trained. I think that if the training goes down, all that's going to happen is we're going to see more use of force incidents and more tragedies. So I think this move to defund the police is a bad idea. And with regard to Minneapolis, they're actually considering abolishing the police department. And I don't know what that's going to look like, but I know that's going to be bad. I don't think that anything good will come of that. All that's going to do is it's going to increase anarchy, and mobs of violent felons, gang members will basically be running amok, terrorizing everyone they can, and victimizing the weak. People need to realize that just because you get rid of the police, authority doesn't go away. It just creates a vacuum for authority. And so someone's going to have to assume that authority. And if history has shown us anything, it's going to be the most violent members of the society. And they can do whatever they want to you. And that's a prospect that should terrify everybody. I'm not saying that we don't need reforms. Do we need to address racial profiling? Yes. Do we need to address police brutality? Yes. What doesn't make any sense is that how everyone is saying that all cops are bad. This is something that I'm seeing a lot on social media. Like, people actually believe that all of the police officers are bad, and if not all, then most of them. I just don't believe that. I think that believing most cops are bad is insane. There are bad, evil people in all walks of life. First of all, I don't understand why people think that the police are immune from the problem of human evil. It exists everywhere. It exists in all facets of life. And so no matter how thorough of a background check you do, no matter how thoroughly you vet people, there's always going to be bad people slip through the cracks. If anything, I think we've been seeing positive changes year after year. If you go back to statistics I just read to you, the amount of officer killings are going down, if anything. So I don't really get what all this, what all the anger is about. Just going off that, the earth is not the kingdom of heaven. This isn't utopia. We're never going to have anything perfect, and the police is a perfect example of that. So how should we evaluate Black Lives Matter? Well, consider Matthew 7:15-20. Jesus said that you will know them by their fruits. So what kind of fruits are Black Lives Matter producing? You got to ask yourself, what have they done for the black community? And now ask yourselves this: what have they done to destroy the black community? That's something you should consider, something you should think about. I'm going to talk about the riots and why none of it was justified at all, even though some people on social media were trying to make the argument that it was. So, they were not justified because of destruction to people's businesses and livelihoods, including businesses owned by other black people. A lot of these black people, they had their entire lives destroyed. Their stores destroyed, everything they owned. They have to completely start over. Their lives have been completely upturned. Do their lives matter? Is destroying their lives part of the solution? This is evil, and we don't need to tolerate this. In no way do I understand looting either. The looters are just simply taking advantage of a tragedy to enrich themselves. They're literally using another man's death as an excuse to line their coffers. That's all this really is, and it is despicable. And then you have all these extremists like Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and all these other anarchist groups funded by George Soros that are the problem, the main problem. They're causing the destruction, and the peaceful protesters kind of look bad by association, but we know that there's a lot of peaceful protesters who just aren't involved with any of this. However, we have many people who witnessed this destruction being caused by Antifa, the anarchist groups, and possibly Black Lives Matter in some instances, and they decided to join in because their emotions are running high. They think that if they just break things and destroy things, they'll call attention to their cause, and it'll make people listen. However, it's having the opposite effect. It's making people loathe their cause, when really a lot of people in society, pretty much everyone, was on board with their case after Floyd was murdered unjustly. But all this has done is pretty much cause people to loathe the cause. It's having the opposite effect. I get the people on social media defending the riots because they're fed up and they just feel like they have no other outlet. But two wrongs still don't make a right, and violence only begets more violence. These rioters and looters, they're destroying these communities, including the black communities, for a generation. And then on top of that, you have these shameless Hollywood low-life celebrities and these corporations paying the bail of these anarchists and these rioters and allowing them to go back out into society and terrorize people all over again. We have cops being seriously hurt and maimed for life. I mean, that really does bother me. We have cops being run over. There was a cop in Las Vegas who got shot in the back of the head, and now he's going to be on the ventilator for the rest of his life. And a lot of these cops likely never did anything wrong. They probably never did anything wrong. And so why should they be punished for the actions of a few? Do we still need to understand tolerate these riots now? And speaking of this, it's evil to label all cops as bad. You know, Satan comes against us with our past to try to make us feel bad about ourselves, to try to talk us out of our destiny, to make us think that we can't be used by God and nothing good can be done for us. But it's a whole other level of evil to use other people's past against you. It's just wrong. And you know, I've seen memes about businesses being okay because they have insurance. I don't even really know what to say to that. Most insurance do not cover acts of war and riots. So the people who've lost their businesses, who don't have that specific coverage, which most of them don't, they're completely out of luck. And taking that even a step further, even if insurance companies did cover this, I'm a bit perturbed by this cavalier attitude towards, oh, well, you know, the insurance companies will pay for it. Because if the insurance companies pay for it, you know, everyone's premiums are going to go up. The insurance companies are going to have to pay for it, and it's going to affect all of us. So, you know, it's just silly how they think the world works. You know, the money has to come from somewhere, and it comes from us. I've seen memes about how we should always be more angry about Floyd's death than all the burning buildings. I think that's silly. I think you can be angry about both. They're both wrong. Now, for people who still say it's no big deal that property can be replaced, consider this. In many neighborhoods from the 1968 race riots, they've never come back. So it's something to consider. There's been some instances of just pure evil being committed during these riots. I heard of this one instance where a couple was beat severely for defending their business. There was one instance of protesters and rioters blocking a fire truck from going to put out a fire that they set. And there was a little girl inside. And thankfully, the police were able to clear a way so that the fire truck was able to get through. But still, I mean, that's just despicable. And, you know, we've also seen videos of, you know, people trying to carjack people, trying to open their doors, people swarming over truck drivers who are just trying to do their job. And then there was that incident of David Dorn being murdered by rioters. He was just trying to defend his business. And he was shot, and, you know, the death was actually live streamed. And my question is, you know, it wasn't just him. There was actually, I think, five African Americans who were killed during all this, and it just makes me think, where's the outrage for these individuals? I thought Black Lives Matter, they cared whenever any black life was lost. And it just makes me wonder, I wonder how many people have been hurt just by protecting what is theirs in the past few weeks. Now, people have been saying that this is the largest civil rights movement in history. No, it is not. There is a very dark, evil agenda being enacted behind the scenes. Now, I want you to all remember that this was caused by a lie. The lie that the police are committing genocide against African Americans. The media amplifies a few instances of wrongdoing on behalf of the police officers to divide us. The reasons this is being done is as follows. 1, to harm Trump's re-election chances and to plunge the nation further into turmoil after the COVID-19 crisis. Now, we need to understand this: Democrats need to win. They have to be back in power because they want to lessen America's place in the world and work toward making us part of a one-world government. Right now, there is a quest for a one world government, but the globalists cannot realize their plans while the U.S. is still standing and is the superpower in the world. The U.S. is like the big boy on the playground, and they can't do anything while he's standing. And Trump, while he's in power, is not going to let these people lessen the place of the United States in this country. He's not going to tolerate that. And so the Democrats will, though. Obama started it, and Hillary would have finished it if she would have won. Therefore, the Democrats must wrest control of the government from Trump and the Republicans. The second reason for all of this is that the left is trying to sow the seeds of racial division and discord in this country. They know that this will lead to infighting, and they know that doing away with the police will lead to chaos. They're setting the stage for the Antichrist. Now, the evangelist Marcus Rogers, he had this really awesome YouTube video I saw a while ago about how God gave him a vision that Satan used slavery in America as a seed that would eventually allow the Antichrist to come to power. And to me, that makes a lot of sense because the African-American community, by and large, is very conservative. They're all about family values, and they would never vote for a radical party like the Democrat Party if it were not for issues of racism and slavery. Obviously, racism and slavery, those are very powerful issues, so that's why they vote for them. Otherwise, they would never vote for them, and the Democrat Party would be relegated to a extreme minority, a joke party in this country. Now, the Antichrist is going to step onto the scene at a time where there's massive chaos and suffering, and he's going to appear to have all the answers. He's like, I can fix this. I can solve all this. I can bring people together. And the media is going to love him. They're going to praise him. They're going to say that he's the savior, the one who we've been looking for. He will adhere to a T the religion of progressivism, and this will cause people to love him. He won't run as a Republican. He won't be able to because he has to be loved by Hollywood, the media, and the academics, and they all demand strict adherence to abortion, the transgender agenda, and all these other left-wing issues that wouldn't fly in the Republican Party. So the Antichrist will run as a Democrat, and that is something that should be obvious. Now, I want you all to remember the first part of John 10:10. The thief comes only to steal and to kill and to destroy. Have we not seen an abundance of this in the past few weeks? We need prayer. We need prayer back in our schools and in our homes. We need God. We need God back in the public sphere. We've done everything possible to remove him from everything. And we haven't just made everything secular, but we've made it anti-God. And look at the results. We celebrate the faux sacraments of sex, abortion, more appropriately titled baby murdering, status, popularity, money, and power, but not the virtues of Christianity. Christian conservatives really need to start speaking up and fighting back against this. We cannot be silent anymore. The reason we're here now is we've been silent for too long. And it's understandable because, we've been just living our own lives. We've been busy doing stuff that's important to us. But the time for that is now over. We are living in the end times, and we are barreling forth at breakneck speed towards the end times tribulation and the second coming of Jesus Christ. So what can you do to help? So first is you can share this video with whoever you think would benefit from it, anyone who you think could learn something from this. Second is read your Bible and talk to everyone you can about the truth of Jesus Christ and the message of grace and redemption. Third is you need to start paying attention to politics. We're not living in normal times. The war between good and evil is here. And the front line of this war is politics, academia, media, and the pop culture. Pay attention to what's going on. Arm yourself with knowledge so that way you can refute the lies of the socialist left. Speak out against what is wrong in your daily lives and use whatever platform you have, whether that be social media or just talking to your friends or just talking to people at work. It is a dark time, and there's just so many lies out there. It may seem like the easy route to just kind of go along with all this. It may seem like it's right to just go with the popular opinion. It's the path of least resistance. You want to keep all your friends, and you don't want to ruffle any feathers. But just remember that there is a dark agenda here, and it's all leading to a very dark place. This is setting up the stage for the end times tribulation. The good news is that Jesus Christ is coming back soon. You will see. Now, people have been reciting this cliche, and I'll conclude with this, that if you're not on the side of Black Lives Matter, then you're on the wrong side of history. Yeah, if history is written by the leftist, woke, social justice mob, then yes, we would be on the wrong side of history. But otherwise, if you, in the kingdom of heaven, you will be considered to be on the right side of history. That, I truly assure you of that. One day, we're all going to have to answer to God for what we did and didn't do during this time. God bless you all, and God bless America.